The Truth Girls.
Hi everyone. My son is autistic and I'm not trying to cure him. And here's why. This may come as a surprise to you, I figure, because after all, here I am, the truther girl, who had done all these videos about autism and about natural health and all this stuff. And so surely if my son was diagnosed with something like ASD, I would be the first one to fix it, right? Well, that's kind of what I thought too in the beginning. But let's just say that this road we've been on has been a series of discoveries, revelations, and sometimes an exercise in humility. Before I go into why I'm not trying to cure my son, I want to say that I know that there are some people out there whose children were given a diagnosis of autism, but have a lot of coexisting medical issues. A lot of these parents who have children like this, they insist that this followed either some kind of infection or often a vaccine or exposure to something else. Some of these people are, attempting to recover their children from autism. What they're really doing is they're recovering their children's health. And as their health improves, a lot of the symptoms or behaviors that were ascribed to just autism improve as well. I can't judge all those other people. I don't think they're crazy. I think they're trying to do what's best for their kids. But in our case, I realized that I wasn't going to cure my son. I'll tell you why. At the very core of this is my coming to an understanding that if we got hung up on the idea that we were going to cure him, as in make him neurotypical, so I kind of have to laugh because that sounds ridiculous to me now, but that if we were going to cure him, what we were really doing was we were not accepting him. We were not accepting him for who he was, and we were probably going to miss out on a lot of experiencing him for who he was instead of sitting there and trying to figure out how to fix him. Here's basically what we went through in this road. I guess our first reaction was denial that, our kid is fine. And I talked about some of this in another video that I did about high functioning ASD and the signs that we missed. The second reaction was stress, because we were put in a situation of being under a lot of stress once he entered school, and it became obvious that he was really different. He wasn't able to function at the level other children were. He had a lot of behavioral issues, and then we entered into the process of seeing a lot of doctors, different kinds of doctor's appointments, psychiatrists, social workers, therapists, day programs, and all that stuff, which was really stressful. Part of the stress was me worrying that people were going to say that I wasn't a good mother, and of being judged that I wasn't a good enough disciplinarian, my kid was totally out of control, why was he acting like this? Which it wasn't the case. That's not what they did. The next thing was, oh my God, we have to fix this. I'm going to cure him. These things, some of them kind of happened simultaneously. Like as we were going through all this stressful stuff, and I was realizing that something was really wrong, I felt that I had to do everything I could to sort of save my kid. And I endeavored to find out if there was anything physically wrong with him that could be addressed. And there were some things. I have a list of them here, with the main ones where one was a zinc deficiency, which we found out through hair analysis. Another thing was that he probably needed more fatty acids. That's something I sort of figured out on my own because I had seen improvements in his behavior and his social reciprocity and all that with things like raw milk, full-fat raw milk, and some omega-3s and stuff like fermented cod liver oil. Another thing was antibiotics and homeopathy came in because he was diagnosed with PANDAS. It was like an autoimmune reaction to strep. This was almost 3 years ago now, something like that, 2.5 years ago. Taking care of the PANDAS did help a lot because when he had a PANDAS flare or PANS flare, you wouldn't believe the kind of behavior we had to deal with. I mean, really aggressive, violent.
What's the matter? I'll get you a
OCD type stuff. His speech deteriorated. I guess from an autism point of view, it would be what somebody might call a late regression. Now, I don't have this all figured out, but I guess he did regress. His speech deteriorated. like quite a lot, and we were really freaked out. And probably some of that was related to that. Although the extreme stress that he experienced once he started school may have had also something to do with it. It may have had something to do with why he deteriorated so much and why he was also susceptible to a PANS flare at the time. We don't really know 100% what happened. And another thing was MTRR, which is a methylation defect that we found out he had. And so, we had to, eliminate additives and things like that from his food, and it can be addressed with B vitamins. Now, in spite of all that, okay, at some point we came to a realization that those medical issues were not defining who he was and why he was behaving the way he was. That there was something more to it than that. And one of the things that was really hard to sort of deal with, I'm just going to close my laptop, was when I had the realization that looking at him was like looking at a mirror of myself when I was a child. I know it's very hard to believe because you look at me now and you'd be like, there's nothing wrong with you. But as a child, I had really, really strange behavior, very, very, very awkward on social end. I was much more withdrawn than my son. I had really bad sensory issues, and I basically had a lot of ASD behaviors. I know that you'd probably look at me and say, like, wow, you're totally recovered. I think I'm a lot healthier. I think I've matured, I've grown, and people change as they get older. I mean, most adults behave better than kids. And also I've learned to, adapt and accommodate and work around things. And yeah, but I was looking at my son and I thought, this looks awfully familiar. And as he was getting diagnosed and I ended up getting sort of retroactively diagnosed, I realized, he gets this from me. And I remember what it was like for me as a child. And I remember how much it hurt for people to not accept me the way I was. And always be comparing me to everyone else and be saying, why can't you be like this? Why can't you do that? I mean, that hurts any child. But, for a kid with ASD who has these really, like, annoying or unpleasant behaviors or bizarre behaviors to everyone else, and everybody's just sort of blaming you for your behavior, like, you got to stop doing that. Well, actually, everyone who has ASDs, all the behaviors they engage in, there's a reason for them. They don't just do them, they don't do them to annoy you, that's for sure. And they just don't do them for no reason. And so I realized that I did not want my son to go through what I went through, because my biggest goal of all of this was for him to come out knowing finding his passion, like finding what he was really interested in and good at, and knowing what he wanted to do instead of being pushed into a mold, and liking himself and coming out of this with his self-esteem intact. Because if you don't have your self-esteem intact and you're always trying to be someone you're not, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. So at this point, yeah, the realization that, oh my God, he gets this from me. And then there was all this cognitive dissonance because, well, wait a minute, autism is supposed to be this thing that, like, you're sick and you're supposed to cure it. And, like, what does this mean? That, I'm on the spectrum, or I was on the spectrum as a child, and, like, I'm an okay person. I don't think I'm sick. I'm the way I am. I hated everybody pressing me into a mold. So, I was thinking all these things. And I just realized that I had to accept it. And that even if we took care of all these medical issues on the surface, or dealing with things on the surface like behaviors, taking care of medical issues, that even if we fixed his zinc and we did all this stuff with the diet, even if his behavior got a lot better and less annoying to everyone else, or if he struggled a lot less with things like sensory issues, or whatever it was, underneath all that, he would still be autistic. I mean, he would be on the spectrum. And it is impossible, I think, to take someone who is born neurodivergent, like ASD, and make them neurotypical. Although I guess you could get it to a point where they became so functional that, as far as everyone else was concerned, that they didn't have a visible disorder. But that doesn't change the fact that they still are different. The way that you relate to people when you have ASD and experience the world, like process things, is different. You're not NT. So we had to accept that our son was different. And we had to support him. And that was, I think, the biggest thing that we had to realize in all of this was that of all the things that he needed, what he needed was for us to be supportive and to accept him the way he is. And we just sort of stopped fighting it and became really supportive. And, you know, we had to lower our expectations for some things. I mean, he's still needs a lot of help with, like, self-care and things that other kids probably do at this age. And he needs a lot of help with organizing himself. I mean, he needs a lot of help, like, all the time, basically. But we just sort of accept and work with it and work with his strengths a lot instead of trying to change him. Because it's really not any different than if you have a child who's artistic and you try to turn him into, you know, a jock. Or if you have someone who's a jock and you try to turn him into, like, more academic. I mean, a person is what they are. So you just got to work with it. And the result of all this is that he's a lot happier. And things are a lot better for us as a family. And it seems like we finally struck a balance where, you know, we do have to discipline him and we have to work with this stuff, but at the same time, we also accept him. And some of his behavior that might look really odd to other people, we just accept it. So basically that's it. Like, we're not trying to cure him, we accept him and we support him as much as possible, and the result is actually he's doing a lot better, he's a lot happier, and when he's feeling better and he's less stressed, his behavior is also a lot better. And, you know, life is alright. So thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.